Okay, so have you ever noticed how women just seem to have this superpower when it comes to communication?
Uh,
Like the way they can connect and share feelings and just seem to get each other.
yeah.
So today we're going on a deep dive into the science behind all of that. And we've got this fascinating source, the science of women's communication and connection.
Yeah, it turns out there's actually, a lot more going on than just like social norms. We're talking about, differences in brain structure, hormones, even evolution, like how evolution has shaped the way that men and women communicate.
Okay, so first up, brain wiring. The source says that when women talk, they use both sides of their brains while men tend to stick to the left side, the more analytical side. So does that mean that women are literally hardwired for more emotional communication?
That's exactly what the research suggests. Using both sides of the brain allows for like more integrated processing of emotions and language. It's not just about conveying information, it's about expressing and understanding like
Yeah.
all those nuances of feelings.
So is it old saying, men are from Mars, women are from Venus? Is there some scientific truth to that after all?
There might be. But it's important to remember we're talking about tendencies, not absolutes, right? Not every man is a stoic problem solver, and not every woman is an emotional whirlwind.
Right, of course. But it's fascinating to think about how these differences play out in everyday conversations. Have you heard about that study that found that women use an average of 20,000 words a day compared to men's 7,000?
Yeah, and that's not just about being chatty, right? It's about the way women use language to build relationships, create a sense of community, and navigate the complexities of social dynamics.
So you mentioned evolution earlier. How does that fit into the picture?
Well, evolutionary psychologists suggest that women's communication styles evolved to foster those strong social bonds, which were essential for raising children and maintaining these cooperative communities, sharing feelings, offering support, and reading emotional cues. All that became crucial for survival.
And men, meanwhile, were out hunting mammoths and inventing the wheel. So their communication focused more on problem solving and getting things done.
Exactly. Imagine a group of early humans planning a hunt. They didn't have time for these lengthy emotional discussions. They needed clear, concise instructions to make sure they were successful. So men's communication styles evolved to be more direct, more task-oriented.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
But doesn't that create a potential for misunderstandings in modern relationships? I mean, if women are wired to connect through emotions and men are wired to solve problems, they're kind of speaking different languages, aren't they?
You've hit on a key point there. These differences in communication styles can definitely lead to misinterpretations and frustration if we're not aware of them. For example, imagine a woman sharing her feelings about a stressful day at work.
She just wants to vent, get some empathy, maybe a hug.
Exactly. But a well-meaning man, operating from his problem-solving instinct, might jump in with solutions like, why don't you just talk to your boss? Or maybe you should look for a new job.
And suddenly, the woman feels like he's not listening, that he doesn't understand her at all. He's trying to fix the situation, and all she wants is to be heard, validated.
Yeah, that's a classic example of how these ingrained communication patterns can clash. The man is trying to be helpful, but his approach can inadvertently shut down the emotional connection the woman is actually seeking.
Okay, I'm starting to see how this all fits together. So it's not just about men being, bad listeners or women being overly emotional. It's about recognizing that these communication differences are really rooted in biology and evolution.
Precisely. And once we understand that, then we can start to bridge the gap and communicate more effectively with each other.
But before we get into that, I'm curious about something else this source mentions, the role of hormones, specifically oxytocin. It's called the connection hormone, right?
Yes. And it plays a significant role in women's communication. Studies have shown that women, they release more oxytocin during social interactions, which enhances those feelings of bonding and connection.
So for women, talking isn't just about exchanging information. It's like a chemical experience that literally makes them feel good.
Exactly. Think about how you feel after, a heart-to-heart conversation with a close friend. That sense of warmth, trust, closeness, that's partly oxytocin at work.
That explains why I always feel so much better after a good gossip session with my girlfriends.
Well, it's not just gossip, right? It's, any kind of conversation that involves that emotional sharing and empathy can trigger the release of oxytocin. For women, talking is a powerful way to nurture those relationships and create that sense of belonging.
And I'm guessing men don't experience that same hormonal rush during a conversation about, let's say, football stats.
It's not that men don't experience oxytocin at all, but their levels tend to be lower during social interactions. Their brains are wired to release more of the hormone during activities like um, physical touch, problem solving, things like that.
So while a woman might feel most connected through a deep conversation, a man might feel closer after, working on a project together or going for a run.
Exactly. It's about understanding that different activities and different communication styles, they trigger different hormonal responses in men and women.
This is all so fascinating. But I have to admit, I'm starting to see myself and the men in my life in a whole new light.
That's the power of understanding the science behind communication. It helps us move beyond the stereotypes and appreciate the unique strengths that each gender brings to the table.
Okay, so I'm ready to dive deeper into those strengths. What else does this source tell us about the specific ways that women communicate?
We've been talking about how women's brains are wired for communication, how evolution has shaped their communication styles, and the role of hormones like oxytocin. But let's get even more specific.
Okay.
Have you ever noticed how women often use more descriptive and emotional language?
Oh, absolutely. They're all about the details and the feelings, painting a vivid picture with their words. It's like they're bringing you right into the experience with them.
And there's a fascinating biological reason for it that women have a larger and more active hippocampus, which is the part of the brain responsible for memory and storytelling.
So it's not just that they're choosing to be more descriptive, their brains are literally built for it.
Exactly. And this ties back to their communication goals. Remember, for women, communication is often about building connection and understanding.
So those details aren't just fluff, they're adding depth and nuance to the conversation, helping them create a stronger bond with the listener.
Precisely. And that's why sometimes you might notice that women take a more winding path to get to the point of a story.
Whereas men are more likely to just cut to the chase.
Yes, it's a different approach to storytelling. For men, efficiency and clarity are often the priorities. But for women, the journey is just as important as the destination. It's about weaving a rich tapestry of emotions and experiences that deepens the connection.
I'm starting to see how these differences can cause friction in conversations. It's like men are trying to build a bridge and women are creating a work of art. Both are valuable, but they require different approaches.
That's a great analogy, and that's why understanding these differences is so crucial for effective communication. It's not about judging one style as better or worse. It's about recognizing the strengths of each and learning to appreciate the diversity of communication approaches.
Okay, so we've talked about brain wiring hormones and storytelling styles. But there's one more aspect of women's communication that I find particularly intriguing, the way they process thoughts through talking.
This is a key difference that often leads to misunderstandings between men and women. Women often use conversation as a way to organize their thoughts and feelings they think out loud, exploring different perspectives and nuances as they speak.
That's so true. I've definitely noticed this with my female friends. They'll start talking about something and their thoughts will evolve and change as they're speaking. It's like they're figuring things out in real time.
Exactly. And this can be confusing for men who tend to process their thoughts internally before speaking. They're more likely to present a finished product, a carefully considered opinion or solution.
So while a man might think just get to the point, a woman is actually using the conversation itself as a tool for processing and understanding.
Precisely. And this is where patience and empathy are crucial if a woman is talking through something. It's important to resist the urge to interrupt or offer solutions unless she specifically asks for them.
It's about creating a safe space for her to explore her thoughts and feelings without judgment or pressure to come to a conclusion.
Exactly. Remember, it's not about being right or wrong. It's about understanding that for many women, talking is an integral part of how they make sense of the world.
This has been so eye-opening. I feel like I'm finally starting to understand why communication with women can sometimes feel like navigating a different dimension. But I'm curious, how can we use this knowledge to actually improve our communication skills?
Well, we've uncovered so much about how women's brains are wired for communication, the evolutionary roots of their communication styles, and even the role of hormones. But there's one area, that I think a lot of people struggle with, and this source touches on it too. It's that whole concept of indirect communication. Ah, yes, indirect communication. It's a fascinating and often misunderstood aspect of women's communication.
Yeah, it can be tricky. It's like you're trying to decipher hints and read between the lines. Sometimes I feel like I need a secret decoder ring.
Well, think of it this way. For women, indirect communication is often a way to preserve harmony, avoid confrontation, or even just like test the waters before fully committing to a position.
So instead of saying like, hey, can you close the window? I'm freezing. It's more like, it's getting chilly in here, don't you think?
Yeah, exactly. It's about expressing a need or a desire without, being overly assertive or
And
demanding.
I can see how that would be valuable in maintaining social relationships, right? You're not putting someone on the spot or risking a direct conflict.
Precisely. But for those who are used to a more straightforward communication style, it can be, well, a source of frustration.
Yeah. It's like you're speaking two different languages.
In a way, yes. And that's where misunderstandings can arise. Imagine a man who takes that chilly in here comment literally. He might just agree that it's a bit cold and leave it at that.
While the woman is sitting there thinking, why isn't he getting up to close the window?
Exactly. She's expecting him to, infer her meaning, to pick up on that subtle cue. And when he doesn't, it can lead to those feelings of being unheard or unappreciated.
So how can we, like, bridge this communication gap? Any tips for navigating the world of indirect communication?
For men, it's about developing a sensitivity to those subtle cues. Pay attention to body language, tone of voice, the context of the conversation. If something seems a bit off, don't be afraid to gently, probe for clarification.
So instead of just saying, yeah, it is a bit cold, maybe ask, are you feeling cold? Should I close the window?
Exactly. It shows that you're engaged, you're listening, and you're willing to meet her needs, even if they're not explicitly stated.
And for women, perhaps being aware of this tendency towards indirect communication could be helpful.
Yeah.
If you need something specific, don't be afraid to be direct.
Absolutely. Sometimes, clear and straightforward communication is the most effective way to get your needs met. It can save a lot of frustration and miscommunication in the long run.
Throughout this deep dive, I've realized that understanding the nuances of communication, especially between men and women, it's like unlocking a secret code. It's about recognizing that there's no right or wrong way to communicate, just different styles shaped by this complex interplay of biology, evolution, and social conditioning.
And by embracing those differences, by learning to appreciate the unique strengths of each style, we can create a world where communication is a source of connection and understanding rather than conflict and frustration.
So for all of you listening out there, as you go about your day, pay attention to the way you communicate with the people in your life. Listen for those subtle cues, those unspoken messages. And don't be afraid to ask for clarification, to bridge those communication gaps with empathy and understanding. Who knows, you might just discover a whole new level of connection you never knew existed.